My name is Marina Collins. I'm 34 years old, and I want to tell you something that took me a year to say out loud. Every Friday evening for 52 weeks, my husband walked out of our house in Charlotte, North Carolina, kissed me on the cheek, and told me he had a late meeting at the office. Every Friday, I watched his car disappear down the street. Every Friday, I put our daughter to bed alone. And every Friday, I already knew the truth. But I said nothing. I want to tell you why, and what I did instead. It started on a Thursday in October. I was doing laundry, his gray slacks, the ones he wore to the office. I reached into the pocket the way you do when you've been married 7 years and the routine has become muscle memory. And I pulled out a receipt. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Table for 2. A bottle of wine I had never tasted. The date was last Friday. The time was 8:47 p.m. I stood in the laundry room for a very long time. Daniel had told me he worked until midnight that night. Some quarterly report, he said. Couldn't be helped. I had made him a sandwich for the road and left it in the fridge with a little note. Don't forget to eat. He came home at 12:15, smelling like cologne I didn't recognize. I thought it was from a client dinner. I thought a lot of things. I put the receipt back in the pocket. I folded the slacks. I placed them on his side of the closet. I did not say a word. Our life looked perfect from the outside. We had a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood in South Charlotte. Daniel was a project manager at a construction firm. Good salary, company truck, health insurance that covered everything. I worked part-time at a dental office and spent the rest of my time raising our daughter Sophie, who was 3 years old and obsessed with dinosaurs and the color yellow. I had stopped baking when Sophie was born, not because I wanted to, but because there simply weren't enough hours. Before her, I used to spend entire Saturday afternoons in the kitchen. Custom birthday cakes, wedding tears, sugar flowers that took 4 hours to make. Friends called it a talent. I called it the only time I felt completely like myself. I hadn't turned on my stand mixer in almost 2 years. That Thursday night in October, after I put the receipt back and folded the slacks and put Sophie to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and thought about the life I was living. The house was quiet. Daniel was watching television in the other room, laughing at something. The laugh sounded easy, unbothered. And I thought, I need more information before I do anything. The next Friday, I watched him leave. He kissed my cheek. He said, "Don't wait up." And I stood at the window and watched the truck turn the corner. Then I opened my laptop and started looking up cake supply wholesalers in North Carolina. I didn't know what I was building yet. I just knew I wasn't going to fall apart. People ask me now, how did you know for certain? And when did you know? I knew within 3 weeks. And I knew for certain on a Tuesday when I found a second phone in his gym bag. A prepaid one, the kind teenagers use when they're hiding something from their parents. There were messages on it. I read them. I won't describe what they said. What I will tell you is that her name was Ashley, and she worked at a commercial real estate office 2 blocks from his company. I sat in our master bathroom, on the tile floor, with the door locked. Sophie was napping. The house was completely still. I read those messages, and I felt something happen to me. Not crying, not screaming, but a kind of slow, cold settling, like ice forming over a lake. Quiet, firm, final. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. That night, my best friend Kate called me. Kate Brennan. We had been friends since college, and she had always been the kind of person who says the thing everyone else is afraid to say. We were talking about something completely unrelated, her new apartment in Raleigh, when she suddenly stopped and said, "Marina, are you okay? You sound like you're reading from a script." And I almost told her. I got right up to the edge of the words, but something stopped me. Instead, I said, "I'm just tired. Sophie's been waking up early." "Marina." "I'm fine, Kate." There was a long pause. Then Kate said, "Whenever you're ready. I'm not going anywhere." I hung up and sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that. Here's the part that's hard to explain. I wasn't staying silent because I was afraid of him. Daniel had never been cruel. He wasn't a bad man in the obvious ways. He was steady and responsible, and remembered to pick up milk and coached Sophie's little gym class on Saturday mornings. The version of him I had married was still in that house, just shared now, split in half without my permission. I was staying silent because I needed to be ready. I had $73 in my personal checking account. I had no business license, no commercial kitchen, no savings of my own. If I walked out of that marriage today, I would be walking out with a 3-year-old and almost nothing else. And I had watched enough women in my family do that, walk out before they were ready, to know what the other side of that door looked like without a plan. So I made a plan. I opened a separate savings account at a different bank, a small credit union on the other side of town. I started depositing whatever I could, $20 here, $40 there, the birthday money from my mother that I usually just folded into the household account. I told no one. Then, I started baking again. It started small. A coworker at the dental office mentioned her daughter's birthday was coming up. I offered to make the cake. She paid me $60. I put the $60 in the credit union account. Then a neighbor. Then a colleague of Kate's in Raleigh who drove up specifically because she'd seen a photo of the cake I'd made. I started a simple Instagram page. No last name, just Marina's Custom Cakes, Charlotte, North Carolina. Within 6 weeks, I had 40 followers. Within 3 months, I had 200. I was fielding 3 or 4 orders a month, then 6, then 10. I baked at night, after Sophie was asleep and after Daniel had gone to bed. I worked at the kitchen table with earbuds in, listening to business podcasts. I was learning everything I didn't know: pricing, food safety certifications, business structure, commercial kitchen rental options in Mecklenburg County. Daniel never once asked what I was doing. He came home every Friday around midnight. He smelled like the same perfume every time. He slept soundly. And on Saturday mornings, he coached Sophie's little gym class, patient and cheerful, completely himself. I watched all of it. I said nothing. And every week, I added to the account. By the end of the year, I had $11,000. And I had a business that was more than a hobby. I saw Ashley for the first time at a school fundraiser, of all places. It was a Friday morning in March. Sophie's preschool was holding a spring carnival, and I had signed up to run the baked goods table. I had been there since 7 a.m. setting up, arranging everything, tying ribbons around the cellophane bags. I was completely in my element. I remember feeling almost happy. Then a woman walked in with a little girl around Sophie's age. She was maybe 28, slender, with that effortless kind of beauty that looks like it doesn't try. Brown hair, a bright smile, an expensive-looking canvas tote bag. She was scanning the room looking for someone. I didn't recognize her at first. Then she laughed at something the little girl said, a specific, bright laugh. And I had heard that laugh before. Not in person. Through a phone that wasn't meant for me to find. Ashley. She bought a bag of my lemon bars. She told me they looked beautiful. She smiled at me the way strangers smile at each other, open and easy, completely ordinary. She had no idea who I was. I smiled back. I said, "Thank you, I made them this morning." She paid with a $5 bill and walked away. I stood behind that table for the next 3 hours, completely steady. I sold out of everything by noon. I handed out my little business card, the one I had designed online for $18, to 11 different people. I booked 2 birthday cake orders before I got back to my car. On the drive home, I called Kate. This time, I told her. I told her everything. The receipt from Ruth's Chris, the second phone, the prepaid messages, the 52 Fridays, the $11,000 in the credit union account, the Instagram page. All of it, in the parking lot of a Publix on Providence Road, while Sophie slept in her car seat. Kate was completely silent for almost a full minute. Then she said, "Marina Elaine Collins, you have been running a business this entire time." "I've been running a small operation," I said. "I need a commercial kitchen to scale." "How much would that cost?" "To rent time in an existing shared kitchen, maybe $400 to $600 a month. To eventually lease my own space," I had already done the math, "I'd need around $30,000 to open something real. I have 11. But I think I can get there." Kate said, "What do you need from me right now?" And that was the moment, right there in a Publix parking lot in Charlotte, when I understood that I had been so focused on protecting myself financially that I'd almost forgotten I wasn't alone. "I need you to help me find a food business attorney," I said. "Done," said Kate. "What else?" "I need someone who can watch Sophie 2 nights a week while I build up my production volume." "Also done," said Kate. "I'll drive up on Thursdays. You bake. I'll do the dishes." I looked in the rearview mirror at Sophie, who had one hand tucked under her cheek the way she always slept, perfect and peaceful. "Kate," I said. "Yeah?" "I'm not falling apart." "I know," she said. "That's what scares me a little. You're one of the scariest people I've ever met when you have a plan." I laughed for the first time in months. Daniel came home on a Friday in April with lipstick on his collar. Not a smudge, not a trace. A full, clear print, coral pink, right on the inside of the white collar of his dress shirt. The shirt he had put on clean that morning. I saw it the moment he walked through the door. He didn't notice me notice. He kissed Sophie, who was still awake and running in circles in the living room, and he set his bag down by the stairs and said, "Rough week. I'm exhausted." "There's food on the stove," I said. My voice sounded completely normal, steady. I don't know how. He walked into the kitchen. He ate standing up, reading something on his phone, the collar still turned slightly toward me. I bathed Sophie. I read her 2 books, her favorites, the ones about the Stegosaurus family. I sat beside her bed until she fell asleep. Then I walked downstairs. Daniel was on the couch with a glass of bourbon and the television on. "There's a mark on your collar," I said. He glanced down. A half-second of something crossed his face, too fast to name, and then he said, without missing a beat, "Oh, that's probably from Sophie. She grabbed me when I got home." Sophie had been in pajamas since 6 p.m. She was not wearing coral lipstick. I looked at him for a long moment. He held my gaze, patient and steady, the way a person looks when they've practiced. I said, "You're right. Good night. And I walked upstairs. I lay in bed that night and I thought about that moment. The ease of his lie, the complete comfort of it. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even particularly careful. He told me my 3-year-old had left coral lipstick on his dress shirt and expected me to nod and go to bed. And until this year, I would have. Something finished itself inside me that night. Not dramatically. No tears, no resolution. Just a very quiet door clicking shut. The next morning, while Daniel was at the gym, I called an attorney. Her name was Ellen Moore, and she ran a small family law practice in Dilworth. Kate had found her through a referral. Ellen had a calm, precise way of speaking that I liked immediately. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and I asked her everything. We talked for 45 minutes. She walked me through North Carolina divorce law, equitable distribution, separation agreements, how physical custody of a young child typically gets handled, what documentation would be useful to have. She used words like reasonable and straightforward and well-positioned, and each one landed like a quiet confirmation of what I already knew. By the time Sophie got up from her nap, I had a clearer picture of what the next 6 months might look like than I'd had in years. That same afternoon, I drove to a commercial property on South Boulevard. It was a small unit in a mixed-use building, previously a sandwich shop. The kitchen equipment was still in place. A 6-burner range, a double convection oven, a long stainless steel prep counter. The space was 1,100 square feet. The lease was $2,200 a month. I walked through it alone, measuring things with my eye. The hood vent was in good shape. The 3-compartment sink was solid. There was a small front area that could work as a retail window, maybe 5 or 6 seats, nothing elaborate. I stood in the middle of that kitchen for a long time. The leasing agent, a young man named Brandon, waited by the door. He was trying not to look impatient. I said, "Can you hold this for 2 weeks while I finalize financing?" He said he could. I signed the letter of intent on the drive home. I had parked down the street and done it right there in the car. The same hour that Daniel's truck was pulling in from Ashley's apartment. I chose a Sunday. Sophie was at my mother's house for the afternoon, one of our regular standing arrangements. The house was quiet. I had made coffee. I sat down at the kitchen table across from Daniel, and I said, without any introduction, "I know about Ashley." The change in his face happened in layers. First, confusion, genuine or performed, I couldn't tell. Then, something that might have been fear. Then, finally, a kind of deflation. The particular look of a person who has been carrying something heavy and just had it lifted from them by someone else. He said nothing. "I've known for about a year," I said. "I found the receipt from Ruth's Chris last October. I found the second phone in November." His jaw tightened slightly. "Marina, I don't need an explanation," I said. "I have a question. Do you want to save this marriage or not?" That was the honest question. Not rhetorical, not an accusation. I genuinely wanted to know where he was standing because it would affect what happened next. He was quiet for a long time. He turned his coffee cup in his hands. Then he said, "I don't know." And that was the answer. Not a confession or a declaration, but 3 words that told me everything about the shape of his honesty at that moment. Not yes, not "I'm ending it, I love you, I'm sorry." Not even a clean no. Just, "I don't know." I nodded. "Okay," I said. "Then here's what I know. I've spoken with an attorney. I'm going to file for separation at the end of this month. I've been building a business for the past year, and I have the means to support myself and Sophie. I'm not asking you to fight me on custody. I think we can work that out. And I'm not asking for anything dramatic. I'm just telling you where I am." He stared at me. "You've been building a business?" "Yes." "For how long?" "About 11 months." He looked like I had told him I had been living a second life, which, in a way, I had. The difference was that mine had a business plan. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't," I said. "You weren't paying attention." That wasn't said in anger. It was just true. And he knew it was true, which is why he didn't argue. What followed was not a scene. There was no screaming, no throwing things, no catastrophic moment. There was a long, quiet conversation at a kitchen table over 2 cups of coffee. And by the end of it, we had agreed on the basic framework of what the next several months would look like. He would move into a short-term rental. We would share time with Sophie. We would use Ellen to handle the paperwork. His mother called me 3 days later. Sandra Collins, a sweet and thoroughly traditional woman who had always treated me with complete warmth. She was devastated. "Please," she said, "don't do this to the family." I told her gently that I had not done this to the family. I told her I still loved her. I told her she would always be Sophie's grandmother. She cried for a long time, and I listened without hanging up. That weekend, I packed a bag for Sophie and one for myself, and we went to stay at Kate's apartment in Raleigh for the week. I sat on Kate's couch the first night, Sophie asleep in the guest room, and I finally let myself cry. Not for Daniel, not for the marriage. For the version of my life I had imagined when I was 26 and full of hope and completely certain that things would be simple. Kate sat next to me and didn't say anything. She just handed me a blanket and put something gentle on the television and let me be whatever I needed to be for a few hours. The next morning, I was back on my laptop, going over the South Boulevard lease with a highlighter. Sophie's Custom Cakes and Bakery opened on a Saturday in January, 8 months after I sat down at that kitchen table and said what I had spent a year saying inside my head. I named it after my daughter. The morning of the soft opening, it was 31 degrees in Charlotte. I had been in the kitchen since 4 a.m. Kate and 2 part-time helpers were with me. We had prepared 64 items: layer cakes, custom-decorated sugar cookies, 3 custom-order birthday cakes for pickup, and 24 of those lemon bars that Ashley had bought at the preschool fundraiser without knowing who made them. By 10 a.m., there was a line outside the door. Not a long line. This wasn't a movie. Maybe 9 or 10 people at first. But they were real people, in coats, holding coffee cups, in line at my bakery on a cold Saturday morning in January. I stood behind my counter and looked at that line and felt something shift in my chest. Not pride, exactly. Something quieter. Something that felt like recognition. Like, oh, there you are. By 1 o'clock, we had sold out of everything except 2 slices of a raspberry almond torte. I kept those 2 slices. That night, after closing, after everyone had gone home and the kitchen was clean and Sophie was at Daniel's for the weekend, I sat alone in my bakery at the small table by the front window. The street outside was empty and lit by streetlights. I ate both slices of torte with a plastic fork straight from the container. They were very good. 3 months after opening, Sophie's was averaging $6,000 in weekly revenue. 6 months in, I hired my first full-time employee, a 23-year-old pastry school graduate named Brianna, who had the steadiest hands with a piping bag I had ever seen in my life. By month 8, I was covering the lease, covering payroll, and paying myself a salary that was 60% higher than what I had been earning at the dental office. The local Charlotte Observer ran a small feature on me in the spring. Charlotte mom turns pandemic hobby into booming bakery. I winced a little at the word hobby, but I kept the clipping anyway. And then, on a Friday afternoon in early summer, a man walked into Sophie's to pick up a birthday cake. The order had been placed online, paid in full, no issues. I was in the back when Brianna came to get me. "The pickup for the Davidson order is here," she said. "He says he wants to thank you personally." I walked out front. It was Daniel. He looked exactly the same, which shouldn't have surprised me, but did slightly. He was holding his keys in one hand, the same way he always held his keys. He looked at the bakery, the counter, the display cases, the chalkboard menu on the wall, the little 6-seat cafe area, with an expression I couldn't entirely read. "You did all this," he said. "Yes." He looked at me for a moment. "Sophie talks about it constantly. She told me her name is on the sign." "Her name is the sign," I said. There was a long pause. Nothing dramatic in it, just two people who had known each other for a long time, standing on different sides of a counter. "The cake looks incredible," he said. "Thank you, Marina." "You're welcome," I said. "Have a good weekend." Brianna boxed it up and he carried it out to his truck. I watched him go through the front window. There was no anger, no victory, no vindication, just a kind of clean stillness. I went back to the kitchen. There were 3 more orders to finish before closing. Here's what I want you to know, if you're at the beginning of something like this. If you're standing in a laundry room holding a receipt that changes everything, or you're lying awake next to someone who has stopped being honest with you, or you're waiting for permission from someone else to begin, you are allowed to be quiet while you prepare. Silence is not the same as surrender. I spent a year saying nothing, but I was not passive. I was building. Slowly, in the cracks of time I had left over, in the hours after bedtime and before sunrise, I was building something that was entirely mine. Not because I wanted revenge, not even to prove something to him, because I needed to know I could. And here's the thing no one tells you about that kind of building. Once you know you can hold yourself up, the rest of the fear goes quiet. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough that you can breathe. Enough that you can walk into a room on your own terms. I have a business now. I have a daughter who puts on an apron and stands next to me on Saturday mornings and decorates sugar cookies with more enthusiasm than precision. I have a good attorney and a good friend and 2 slices of a raspberry almond torte that I will always remember eating alone at a table by a window while my life continued into the next chapter without asking anyone's permission. And I have 53 Fridays a year to spend exactly as I choose. That's my story. If you've ever stayed quiet while you prepared for something bigger, type "I was building" in the comments. If you walked away before you felt ready and survived anyway, type "I jumped." Both are valid. Both are brave. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who might need it today. Thank you for being here.